Welcome to today's lesson. In today's lesson, our grammar will be about types of subordinate clauses. In particular, we will discuss the adjective clause, the adverb clause, and the noun clause. Now, to begin us off, let's take the adjective clause. To define this clause, we say that this is a subordinate clause that usually modifies a noun or a pronoun. Usually, it is introduced by a relative pronoun. For example, take this sentence. The song that I heard on the radio brought back many memories. We have our noun, which is our subject, the song. The words that I heard on the radio is our adjective clause that is modifying the noun song. In our other example, do you know anyone who will lend me a computer? We have our pronoun anyone. The words who will lend me a computer is our adjective clause modifying anyone. For your reference, our relative pronouns are listed here. Now the clue here is that whenever you see a relative pronoun, that is going to be the beginning of your adjective clause. On the side, we have a note about the essential and the non-essential adjective clauses. Now, an adjective clause can be essential or non-essential. That means necessary or important to the meaning of the sentence. Usually, the essential clauses are meaningful. They are necessary. They add value to the meaning of the sentence. If a sentence has an adjective clause and it begins with the word that adjective clause is essential. We also have the non-essential clauses, add interesting information, but they are not actually necessary to the meaning of the sentence. Normally, or as an example, an adjective clause that starts with the word which is a non-essential. You will see that the non-essential adjective clauses are separated from the rest of the sentence by a comma. For example, Georgia has a talent that is hard to match. That is hard to match is our adjective clause, and it starts with the word that. That is an indicator of an essential adjective clause. So in this case, this adjective clause is essential. Another example, my uncle who was born in New York moved to California when he was 12. Our adjective clause who was born in New York has 2 points to follow. It's introduced by the word who over here, and it has commas setting it off. This is an example of a non-essential adjective clause. Moving on to the next type of clause, the adverb clause. Now, an adverb clause is a subordinate clause that modifies a verb, an adjective, and another adverb. Usually, it answers this. It tells us more information about words such as when, where, why, to what extent, or under what condition. Usually, it's going to be introduced by a subordinating conjunction. We have an example here. If deep sea volcanoes keep growing, they eventually break through to the surface. As we said, an adverb clause is introduced by a subordinating conjunction. As we see our subordinating conjunction there, what comes with it is our adverb clause. If deep sea volcanoes, the elliptical adverb clauses. Ellipsis means that certain words are left out or rather understood in a sentence. When this happens, especially when comparison is using the word than and as, and certain words are left out clearly because they are understood even when they are not indicated in the sentence, these are what we call the elliptical adverb clauses. For example, Mary is taller than I. If that sentence was complete, we would say Mary is taller than I am. John can jump higher than I can. We speak in this manner, John can jump higher than I, basically because it is clear that this is the word that is being referred to in comparison than I can. Peter worried more about himself than his mission. In this case, the words he worried about are left out. And these are some of the examples of what we refer to as elliptical adverb clause. Our next type of clause is the noun clause. Now we say that a noun clause is a subordinate clause that acts as a noun. In a sentence, that barren part of town is Carson Village. You can see here that we have a noun that is acting here. Now, to replace that, we can take a noun clause and put in its place. That barren part of town is where the tornado hit. In this case, we have taken Carson Village, we've replaced the words, and now we have a noun clause where the tornado hit. Here we have a guide. The following words are used to introduce the noun clause. Take a moment and master these words in this list. They will help you to easily identify a noun clause whenever it appears in a sentence. Now, on the side we have this note here that noun clause can be used in the same way that we use subjects, direct objects, object of proposition, and predicate nominative. So in your mind, you should be able to follow that a noun clause is used in all the places where nouns normally would be used in a sentence. As a subject, an example is here. Whoever sat in that chair broke it. Whoever sat in that chair. As a direct object, I have learned the hard way that some people are just plain lazy. That some people are just plain lazy. As an object of proposition, I pay attention to what the teacher says. What the teacher says is our object of proposition. As a predicate nominative, prom eve is when the king and queen will be announced. When the king and queen will be announced. For your easy reference of how to identify them as subject and direct object, please refer to the lesson on types of sentences and parts of sentences to be able to tell them apart. Now, remember, we cannot succeed in this until we do some practice. So practice makes perfect. It is time to practice. Simply identify the type of clause in each of these sentences. At this point, you should be able to pause and write down the correct answer in your best understanding. In the first sentence, the boy whose face is red fell down the stairs in the music building. Write down your answer. Okay. Now, simply identify the type of clause in each of these sentences. In the first one, the boy whose face is red fell down the stairs in the music building. Take a moment. What is your answer? Whose face is red. Now, if you have identified this as your adjective clause, then your answer is correct. On to our next sentence. Because many of the islands offered poor farming opportunities, islanders moved often. Identify your clause and identify what type it is. Now, if your answer is because many of the islands offered poor farming opportunities, if you have indicated this as an adjective. Now, in our first sentence here, whose face is red is our clause, and it's an adjective clause. In our next sentence, Because many of the islands offered poor farming opportunities is our clause, and it is an adverb clause. In our third example, what makes a great hamburger is our clause, and it's a noun clause. I hope those were your answers. We come to the end of our presentation. Thank you.